Hey guys, what's up? I got something for y'all today. Actually, it's not for you, it's for somebody else that I know. You might be the person watching it, so it might be for you. So anyway, I'm going to back up. Anyway, what we're doing today is we have a Palmetto State, obviously, a kit came in, not a build, a kit came in, and another box that I have over here for just a second. And it came in, and it's something that I pointed out on Instagram back a while ago, not very long ago. Is it Instagram or Facebook? I don't remember. But anyway, Palmetto State had that 10.5-inch complete upper, right, with the bolt carrier group charging handle and the CAC blade lower parts kit and all that for like $259 or something, $260. That's cheap. In my eyes, that's really, that was a really good deal. Palmetto State, they have good deals sometimes, but then sometimes they have really good deals. And in my opinion, that was a really good deal because in general, you look at it, your bolt carrier group is generally about $100, depending on where you get it, what quality, which one, what the other. Average it out, you're going to come up to about $100. Okay, let's say your barrel, it's again about $100, depending on where you get it. Some are more, some are less, whatever. So about $100, right? The CAC blade, you can get them anywhere between $50 and $75. So that right there, just the blade kit, the barrel, and the bolt carrier group, that's about $250, give or take some, whatever. But you not only have just the whole barrel. I mean, you got the whole upper, right? So you got the upper receiver complete, you know, all put together. It does just have the clamshell style heat guard, right? It doesn't have like a quad rail or anything like that. But the front sight post is on there. What else? The lower parts kit, you know. So it was a really, really good deal. And somebody that I know jumped on that, and they wanted me to help them build them. And before everybody freaks out and starts telling me that I can't build other people's guns, well, yes, I can, because I am an FFL. I don't mention that a lot. I don't know if I've ever really mentioned that, but I do have my FFL, so I can do this stuff. It's not just for fun. I do most of 90%, 99% of what y'all have seen have been just for fun. I think there's only been one rifle that was not built primarily for me. It was built for somebody else. But this is a gun that is somebody else. Technically, they own it right now. Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do own it right now. And so I'm going to build it for them. And I want you all to see it because I have never seen any of these actually put out there. You know, I've seen these kits before, but I've never really seen somebody get one and open it up. So this is how it comes. Well, not exactly. I took the little zip tie off that holds the bolt carrier group in. But this is the upper that we're talking about, right? You can see, I'll read it because I can't read it when it's on the camera. But 5.56 NATO 1 and 7 twist right there, right on the barrel. Yep, 5.56 NATO 1 and 7. Okay, and it's obviously 10.5, right? 10.3s. You know, I do the whole Mark 18s and stuff, and those are just a hair back here, but 10.5 is right here. With A2 bird cage, a flash hider. Like I said, these hand guards or heat guards, whatever you want to call them, they seem to be pretty well made. I don't know. Most of the time, very, very, very often, people just swap these things out, which I think is one reason this thing was so cheap. It's because they know that, so they're just going to give you what they've got. But they have the heat shield inside. It's not just plastic. So kudos to them. Like, really, kudos. You have your T markings up here, so if you're going to take off, put on optics or whatever. The bolt carrier group, I mean, it looks nice and everything. It does say MPI, so that's a good thing. It's not just a, you hope it was done right, just a standard mil-spec charging handle. Anybody that knows what this forging is, I'm not exactly sure what that forging mark right there is. I'll try to remember to take a picture. I don't know what that forging mark is. But it does appear to be fine. I mean, the front sight post appears to be, I'm going to point this at myself, but it does appear to be level or vertical. It's not canted. That's one thing you really got to look for, especially when we're dealing with like budget builds and things. Let's see. And this is how it came. It didn't come unassembled, so I did not assemble the upper, right? And then we have, maybe for some contest someday, I'll ask how many times I say in my videos. Because I say an awful lot. I know that. Lower parts kit, which obviously it just has, I can feel it. I don't know if you can really see it. You'll see it in a minute. But the A2 style pistol grip with all the mil-spec lower parts. The CAC blade, which it is the CAC blade, and it does have the dimples. which is nice. There's another one, and the end plate is nice. It's got the 2 little spots for hooking up a sling or something, which is really pretty cool. So they don't have to add that kind of stuff. It's pretty cool. And then obviously the cack blade. Something else that came. All right, we're gonna look at this. Move this guy out of the way. Something else that came, which is really pretty cool. I've seen these, and they've been about the same price. The price wasn't really different from this time, but it was still a really good deal, I think, from what I understand. It was one of those 10-pack of magazines, and then the Spark, right? Yeah, the Spark AR Red Dot Vortex. I've never used this optic. I've heard very good things about it. I really don't think I've heard people legitimately bashing it, right? So I don't think it's, I think the worst thing that I've heard is that it has a lower battery life. But then again, it runs on a AAA battery, so that's not a big deal. You can just throw a AAA battery in there. Yeah, this seems to be fine. So we're going to put this guy on there as well. We're not going to use his mags, right, because we have our own mags. We're going to do that. But when this thing's all built and done, said and done, and whatever, we are going to go out and shoot it. He gave me permission to do that, so we're going to go out and shoot it, see if it runs, see how it runs. You know, does it cycle? Does it cycle the cheap stuff? Does it cycle the brass stuff? You know, we'll give it a run for its money. We're not going to try to burn it up or anything, but we're just going to make sure that it functions, make sure that it works right. But that'll be another video for another day. So right now, it's raining, and I do have time to make a video, but I just have a time to make a video now and not go out to the range. So we're going to get to this. We're going to put it together and see what it looks like. Okay, so welcome. This is going to be, I think, my first actual Patreon video. So I'm going to try to slow things down a little bit for y'all. Try to make it as interesting as possible for y'all, since this is more or less a paid thing. So if you're seeing this, then thank you. I appreciate the support and everything. So as I kind of mentioned earlier, I think, depending on how I edit this, this is one of those Palmetto State build kits, and I'll link a picture. I'll try to remember to take a picture of what exactly I'm saying and put it in here. But Palmetto State, they do really, really good deals. I've gotten several. What, my M16A4 upper, I got that from them. My complete, well, it wasn't complete. It was one of these build kits again. They do a lot of build kits, but they're really good. I think they're really good. But the M4, when I did my M4 versus my Colt M4, the PSA M4, that obviously PSA is from them. My first AR had a Palmetto State upper and an Anderson lower. I believe that's what it was. Or no, it was a complete Palmetto State rifle. That's what it was, yeah, because that's the only Palmetto State lower that I have. So anyway, what we've got going on, I already explained that earlier, but this is going to be a pistol, right? And it's going to be built on this guy right here. I'll spare you the other side because it's got the serial numbers and stuff. And like I mentioned, I have an FFL, right? And this is somebody else's lower that I'm building for them, right? Not for me. But it's a MMP 15 mil-spec lower. Cover up that serial number. You can see what's going on here. Hopefully the lighting's fine. I'm really trying to work on my lighting. So don't blind y'all out. But it appears to be really good quality. It really does. It's not like a keyhole forging or a square forging. I don't know who makes it exactly, who makes it for Smith & Wesson, but it appears to be well made. All right, so we're going to get going on that. The upper already came assembled. It came done, good to go. So I'm just going to go through this. I'm going to try to go through it, just kind of bring you all along for the ride. Most of the time when I'm on camera, I forget things and I have brain farts and brain dumps. So hopefully I don't really get it all mixed up. And hopefully you can understand me and this actually turns out to be semi-interesting. Right? Because nobody wants to sit here and watch a really boring video of a guy talking to himself. And my wife's in there watching some kind of vampire movie, I think. Which looks really interesting. So I'm sacrificing for y'all. I could be in there watching a video with her. She probably would prefer me to. So these are actually really cool. Anybody that has not used these CAC blades, if you've ever thought about them, nowadays there's a lot of different other options out there. So to me, this would be like the base standard, right? I do not recommend anybody will have it. This old thing, this 1,300-pound piece of very unergonomic whatever. I actually used this, right, on my duty rifle when I was a deputy sheriff. I used this, right? Because this was the only thing available at the time. This is what I had. I had a 7.5-inch AR pistol, right, that I qualified with and I carried and I used, and it had this big old hunky thing on there. If I had this guy, this would have looked so much better, right? My lieutenant wouldn't have looked at me sideways every time he saw this and probably thought it was a toy. But to me, this is kind of the industry, like the standard across the board. If you're going to get an AR pistol, it at least needs to have one of these. There are other options out there, some more expensive. These really aren't that bad. They're really, really, really not. But what's cool is when you get the kit, right? It comes with your extension, right? And it has the little dimples in it, which the dimples are cool for this guy because they actually allow you to lock out your. Get the light in there so I can see. They allow you with the little screw, right? It's got a little point on the end to screw in there and to actually lock out your blade, so that if you have to do, if you have to mortar the rifle or whatever. One of the main issues with the SB tactical, or the big hunky one, or the SIG brace, what an SB is, the SIG brace, is it would shift and rotate. So people would take tape on the buffer tube, you know, different kinds of things to keep it from moving. You know, there's some special things you could buy for them. But this kind of alleviates the whole problem. It's not a tape that's going to wear out. It's not, you know, some solvent or whatever that's going to mar things up. It's an actual screw, right, that goes in and basically pins the thing in place. It's not a permanent, you know, attachment, whatever. I'm not going to lock it on there right now. But it keeps it from moving, which is really, really cool. Another thing that they sent, right, that I did not know came with this whole kit was an end plate. Sorry, you can't see it. An end plate that had the two holes on the side, you know, so you can attach the slings and whatever other kind of stuff. I think the only thing you would attach is a sling. But a lot of times when you buy a cheap kit, it's just going to come with some Chinese, just regular end plate. Doesn't do any good except for hold your detent pin in. That's pretty much 90% of what it does. So anyway, that's the end plate. Comes with their buffer tube. I don't have my scale out here, but last time I weighed them, they were just the standard, what was it, 4.3 or something, I think. I don't remember. Okay, the A2 pistol grip, the fire control group, right, the trigger guard. You all know what this stuff is if you're watching this, probably. You got to make sure everything's here, because sometimes you'll buy things and they'll forget a little pin, and that's a pain in the wazoo. But it does look like they have everything, which is good. And kudos to them. Look, see, that's why I always check. Kudos to them. If you can see in there, I don't know if you can see or not, they actually have 3 springs. I don't know if you can see. 3 springs and 3 pins. So they send an extra spring and an extra detent, pin. It's really cool, because a lot of times, especially these, they go flying across the room and you might lose them. So, what I generally like to do is I like to start with my hard stuff, right? The stuff that is a pain in the butt, what I just finished talking about is this, the detents and all that, because if you can get those in, especially at the beginning, when your patience is still, I'm going to move you all in a little bit, when your patience is still good, if you can, lock that down a little bit, if you can get those harder to get pieces in, then in my opinion, you're better, because at the end, sometimes, depending on how the build actually goes, you are ready to break something most of the time. So what I like to do, you got this guy. Where's my razor blade? I usually have a razor blade. Well, I don't know where my razor blade is. So I've usually got a razor blade, but this will work. This little piece of metal or something. And I think there are tools for this. I don't have them. So basically, you put your little detent in here, and I'm sure you can't see, and I can't zoom in on that thing. But you put your little detent in, right? You're going to push it down. You're going to just get in there like that. Push it down without making it pop out like that. And if y'all have better ways of doing this, let me know. Because this is one of the most tedious, stupid things. Like I said before, if I wasn't on camera, then I'm sure I would be able to figure out a lot better. When you get on camera, you start having brain farts and it just looks stupid. There you go. You probably should be wearing like safety glasses or something. So if this thing comes popping off and hits you in the eye, yeah, you're going to put your eye out. There ain't no question about that. There we go. Something like that. Didn't scratch anything, that's good. It's going to be real stiff at first. Dang. Dang, it's going to be real stiff. But it'll get broke in. That's how they are. Okay, so the detent. The front detent, do the rear detent later because unless he wanted me to drill and tap this, which he didn't mention that, and I don't think I have this stuff to do right now. We'll do that the conventional way. So we'll set this guy aside a little bit. This guy is generally next. This is your bolt catch. This is one where people tear up a lot of stuff a lot of times. A lot of times. Okay. So basically, if you have tape, which I know I have tape right here, it's not a bad idea to tape off some areas around where you're working so you don't mar up what you're working on. Especially if it's a brand new lower. If it's getting Cerakoted, if it's getting painted, not that big a deal, but this one is not. This is not right now. And if you scratch it up, then it's just going to look ugly, and you don't want to do that. All right, so for me, put your little detent in. I don't know. Let me lower y'all down a little bit. Maybe you can see better. Maybe you can see a little bit better that way. I don't know. Put this little guy in. Oops. Grab this guy. Or actually, a better way to do it is to start it out. And I did get, see, I'm using new tools that I've never used before for this. Pin holder or whatever to get it started. They make special ones. This one's not one of those special ones, so I just still got to keep it at an angle so I don't scratch everything up. And get my little pin, a little hammer. Just want to get it started. Get it started and get it moving on that side. It started. I'm gonna mark this guy off. Not want to scratch up this lower. Okay, so I like to get it to where it's just past the first little area. I'm sure that makes a lot of sense. I'll show y'all. I'll show you what I mean. If you can see this, I don't know if you can or can't. If you can see this right in here, okay? Come on, focus. right down in here. The pin is being driven through this way. Oop, get you back here. The pin is being driven through this way. If you can get it to where it's just poking through the other side here, it'll kind of catch and hold on to your bolt catch. If you do it right. And if you do it right, it makes it so much easier. Because you barely need it poking through. Barely need it poking through. There you go. And once it's through, it basically is going to hold itself and let you tap it the rest of the way in. At this point, it's all the way through. A longer punch. Once you start getting to the bottom, you're going to be real careful. Don't go over and start marring up. Start marring anything up. Go from a bigger punch, go down to the smaller punch. Just a little bit. Right at the end, use a small one. Just I think this is where it's good to have multiple sets of punches. And if you ever get into this game, then you will end up acquiring different sets of different things. Just like this. And for me, that's good. Because what I'm basically trying to do is make sure you punch it all the way into and past the lip. This is really bad lighting. All the way in here and past the lip, right? So you got these two sides. Man, bad lighting. You got two sides, right? And if your pin, you want your pin basically be centered right in the middle, right? So it's not protruding out of one side or the other. It's just right in the middle. So you can't feel it on one side and you can't feel it on the other side, where it's just inside. If that makes any sense. That's how I prefer to do it, and it has worked for me. Alright. So that's that guy. Other than that, those are some of the hardest parts anyway. Okay, we'll go ahead and install this guy. You can put it all the way through. This is your magazine catch. If you put it all the way through, put your spring in. Trying to throw it on the floor. Put your spring in. You should be able to get a couple rotations. Now, a lot of people put these in backwards. People that don't really spend much time doing this stuff. You got a flat, shiny side, and you got a side with some knurling or some lines on it. That's for your finger, so that needs to go on the outside. All right, and you should, like I said, be able to get a couple rotations. Just compress the spring, right? And there you go. And you get a couple rotations. And once you start getting close to the metal, since we don't want to mar it, we don't want to mess it up, at that point, then you can push the magazine release button, which will push this guy out this side. And hold on. What you can do, since I don't have 6 hands, you can brace this up against yourself so you can push the button in all the way. Just be real careful. And then you're going to start threading it in. There we go. That's exactly how you want it. Okay, what you don't want and what you do want to look for, and this is kind of a bonus tip, whatever. If you're gonna go buy an AR-15, okay, and especially if you're gonna go trade an AR-15, because a lot of guys like me are out there, and a lot of guys that know less than me are out there, and they're gonna build some stuff that's not quite done right. Okay, I've seen people that I know that build things that is just not quite done right. It will work and it'll function, but this is one of those things to where little attention to detail, things like this. If this what am I trying to say? The catch that screws in from this side, the other side of this, threaded, the male portion of this screw, if it's protruding, right? If it's protruding over the top, it's not flush with the button. If it's protruding, it's too far in, right? If it's way down in there and they're just trying, maybe their excuse is they just want the button to be further out, they want it to be bigger or whatever. That's not how it's meant or designed to be made. It's meant to be flush, and if not flush, maybe just a little bit below the surface of the button here. I hope that makes sense, but this is one of those attention to detail things that you need to look for when you go to buy a gun, trade a gun, or whatever, and it's an AR-15. That's really something to look at there. Just a little something. But that should work just fine. In fact, we might just go one more. We'll do one more rotation. Let's see how it looks. See, that's perfectly flush. But in my eyes, I'm going to bring that back down. Because it just doesn't look right to me. So I'm going to bring it back down. Yep, that actually looks a lot better. So you got to figure it out. When you're building these things, cosmetically, it's the attention to detail that brings up value on these things, and attention to detail that sets you apart from anybody else. If you're actually in the business of doing things, if you're not, then it sets you apart from your buddy's Frankenbuild, or however you want to say it like that. So get rid of these pieces of trash for now. Alrighty, and now probably be the best time to put in our fire control group. Okay, should we get all the pieces and everything? Cool. So, another thing that people put in backwards, you need your spring to look like, I can get it, there we go. You need your hammer spring to look like this, okay? If this piece is on the other side, like this, then you need to flip it around like this. That's stupid. But you know what I'm trying to say. If this piece is over on the other side. If the spring is flipped, right? So instead of all the spring and the legs coming off this side of the spring, if they're coming off this side of the spring, it's not right. You want it to be like this. This has the most tension, right? This is how it's supposed to operate. You can get light primer strikes and have some issues if you put it on backwards the other way. All right, and then same kind of thing. I don't know if you could even install this backwards. I just did. Yep, you can install it backwards. So you can put them on backwards, but this is how your trigger spring is supposed to look. Okay, man, I need to figure out a better lighting system. I keep blaming it on the light. That's my excuse, because these little legs are going to provide the tension, right? So that when you're pulling down, it's trying to push the trigger back forward, right? So you need it on there just like that. There you go. And then your little disconnect, your spring. The best way to show you all this, I don't know. Maybe you can see, maybe you can't. One side of this spring is going to be bigger than the other side of the spring. I really don't think it's showing up in that camera. But one side, which for me, it's this side, is bigger than this side. It's just a little bit wider. That side is going to need to go down into this little hole. All right, into this little cutout. There we go. Into that little cutout. Okay, and since that side is a little bit bigger, it's going to hold it down in there. Okay, and then that's where this guy, your disconnector, comes down and sets right on top right there. So that's how that works. Okay. At this point, you can use a lot of different tools, a lot of different methods to get your pins in. But I just eyeball it. I don't think it's that big a deal. Don't really want to force things at this point. You want to gently move them along. Once you get it through the disconnect, once you get your pin through the disconnect, I like to move it over to the other side and kind of look down. And you can, what I just said, you don't want to force things, okay? There's a difference between forcing and overcoming a spring, okay? So what you can do, very lightly, you can tap. All right, very lightly. If you can see that it's lined up and you just need to overcome a spring, right, the detent, you can tap very, very lightly. Because if you start banging on these things, you're going to gouge stuff, you're going to mess them up. You don't want to do that. But to tap on it very lightly, just to pop it over that detent, you're good to go. You should be good to go. If it doesn't move, then back it out, start over, and go at it again, okay? Because you don't want to be messing these up and banging on them. I've never built an AK, but my understanding, listening to people that have, yeah, with those, yeah, you could bang on them and smash on them and stuff. With ARs, they're more delicately timed tools, right? And in a way, you can be a little rough with them on certain areas, but you gotta be a little bit more careful. Okay, whoo, sorry. Coming down off a coffee high. Down in here, remember we just talked about these legs on the hammer. All right. These legs lay across that pin that we just put in, right? So you can lay those legs right across there. Again, you need about 6 hands to do this. Just figure out the best way that you can do it. And once you get it close, there you go. See, mine just went right in. And the same thing. It's in the pin is in the lower, right? And it's in the hammer, okay? So I know it's going in the right way, but there's a detent, or I don't know what you're going to call it, a leaf. It's not a leaf spring. But there's a little detent you got to overcome. If you can move the hammer around and kind of move it a little bit, sometimes you can break it loose like I just did, or not really breaking it loose. You're overcoming that pressure and pushing that pin all the way through, right? But if you can't, you can just give it a little, you can just give it a little love tap, just a little bit, to pop it over that spring. This is, again, where you want to flip it over to this side, and you can see how it's not quite lining up? You just got to move your, I might be able to do this on camera. You move your hammer, and you keep pressure I won't be doing it on camera. You keep pressure on the hammer, or you keep pressure on the pin, and you align the hammer. You align the pin, whatever, and then you should pop into the detent. Just like that. There we go. So now, fire control group is in. Okay, kind of. You still got to put in the. I don't lose anything. Still got to put in the safety. The safety and the pistol grip kind of go hand in hand. One thing we can do before we do that, is we're going to put on this trigger guard. Lost the word there for a second. Put on the trigger guard. One side, and I've actually seen some of these lowers to where both sides, see how this side has a hole? You can look through right here, and then this side does not have a hole. I've seen some of these lowers. I thought I had an 80%er that did that. I might. Yep, I do right here. This lower, this is an 80% lower that I got, and both sides have holes, okay? A lot of times, though, only one side's going to have a hole. So this side has a hole, this side does not have a hole. When you have those, you have your little, your trigger guard. You take your, one side has a little detent, right? This goes down. That's going to go in that one, in the side that does have a hole. It's going to detent in there. There you go. So that's halfway in. Now, you got to be real careful with these little ears, whatever people call them. You don't bend them up, dent them up. So you got to brace this whole contraption against something, right? Line everything up. You have your pin. I actually might have. I do. See, these are pretty handy. These little guys, pretty handy. I think I even got this on eBay. These little pen holders, pretty handy. So we're just gonna put that guy in. Okay, hold on. The main thing here, we got to brace this guy, because if you just start pounding on this thing without bracing the back against something, you're more than likely going to mess it up, and you're going to bend the ears. You're going to have a bad day. This guy started. So once it starts to go through, should pop it right to alignment. All right. Okay, and then again, once you get it going, break out your bigger punch. Once you get closer, smaller punch, so you don't start marring things. Close. I really want to get it a little bit further in there. There we go. So now it's in there, and of course, yes, this side is going to be a little bit shiny because I took off the finish of the pin, but that'll be fine. It's going to be fine. That's a little bit of wax. It's okay. There we go. So you got your trigger guard in there, right? You got your trigger installed, hammer installed. Now, pretty much one of the last parts. Watch here. For those of you that never done this before, look through this hole right here. This hole right here. Excuse me, wow. Look through that hole, and when I pull the hammer back, see how there's a little something in there? It's not complete round. When you pull the hammer back, see how it went away? That's the back end of the trigger, okay? The part that engages with the safety. So when you install your safety, you're going to need to have this thing, the hammer back, okay? One thing you want to make sure you don't do is while you're doing all this, you pull the trigger because it's probably not going to break the first time, but the trigger rests. Right? When it goes forward, it rests on your bolt catch. And these are just pieces of cast steel or whatever they're made out of, and they will break. All right? That's really the issue with dry firing an AR-15 lower, okay? Because this is made to strike the firing pin. If you have a empty gun, right, and your upper is on your lower and all the pieces are in, there's just no ammunition in the gun, then you can dry fire all day. It's fine, okay? Depending on what you have, obviously, if you did it a bajillion times, you're going to break it, but if you fire it a bajillion times, you're going to break it too. But in general, you know what I'm trying to say. But if you dry fire like this, right, then when your hammer goes forward, it's going to smash up against that bolt catch, and the bolt catch is going to break. You're going to stress your hammer, and ultimately, I mean, you could even start stressing out the part of the lower right here if your bolt catch broke or whatever. I don't know. So that's the cause. That's what everybody freaks out about, whether they know it or not. When they're talking about dry firing an AR-15, it's because that hammer, if it's striking that bolt catch, you're going to have issues. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that at all. With the safety, again, it's kind of tied in with a pistol grip. This grip has a screw and then this little hooch majigger. If any of y'all know what this thing's actually called, I don't know. I never took shop class, so I don't know. But whatever that thing is called, it goes in here. And if you've got a long-handled, well, this might work actually. Yep, that'll work. That's a 4.5 millimeter. I think that'll work. Right through there. Yep, cool. Either a long-handled T, this is a 45 millimeter, or a hex, whatever, or a screwdriver with the replaceable heads and stuff. Those work really great. So we're going to take our selector, we're going to feed it through the left side of the firearm. Should just slide right in there. Make sure there's nothing obstructing it. Take your detent. This is your trigger detent, different than the other ones, to where it kind of looks like a bullet. All right, you got a sharp point up here, and then the base actually has a flat, like plate-like thing on the bottom. Kind of looks like a Russian 7.62 by 54R or whatever. It's got a big old lip on it, and what that lip does, that plate, it stops the detent from falling all the way through, because there's a hole you're going to put this in, and it stops the detent from falling all the way through. Okay, and what that detent does is it's the detent for your safety, so that when you flip your safety on and off, that's that click that you hear. That's not the click. That's the selector hitting the metal, the lower. But when we get it all in there, you'll hear it. Okay, so once that guy's in there like that, you're going to take your spring that comes with your detent. You're going to drop that down into the handle, or there's a little hole right here for it. Okay, and then without dropping pieces or firing anything, you're going to slowly work on you're going to work on the pistol grip. And sometimes pistol grips go on easier than others. Some of them are really, really tight, and you really got to open them up pretty much. And they're a pain. Other times, they're not so bad. Okay, so I'm going to try to flip it over here so we can see what's going on. Sure enough, it fell out. See, when I try to do things on camera, it never works. So you've got your detent down in here. You got your selector on safe. You're going to make sure you don't bend or twist, whatever, really bend or crimp your spring. So you're going to align that up. All right, once that's in the hole down here, right, and it's pushing up against your detent, you're just going to try to shove the pistol grip straight up. It's going to feel at a weird angle because the pistol grip's at its own angle. Okay, so once that's in there, great. This guy came out. Gonna use the eyes that we don't have with our fingers. Find the hole. Make sure you don't cross thread this thing. Easy to cross thread if you're not being careful. All right, and then just get to threading it in there. You don't need Loctite. I believe that's one of the reasons of that little washer thingy. It just keeps it from backing out. One reason, possibly. This guy in there, okay, and then you don't want to tighten the living daylights out of it. You just want to get it nice and snug. That's what that little washer thing is for. So once it's in there, you want to make sure it has no wiggle. Okay, there's no wiggle here. You want to make sure that this is closed up. There's no gap here, no gap. So there's no gap. That click, that's the detent working. So now our detent is working. This is not hanging up on anything. All right, we're going to cover the hammer to make sure it doesn't fall by itself. Put the weapon on safe. Nothing should happen. Put it on fire, and it should go forward. And then you should be able to push it all the way back, and it catch, right? And then you release your trigger. There you go. So that's the function check. All right, so function check's just fine. Now, on to almost the last thing. We need our, vice block. Which goes in here like this. We're gonna back up the camera a little bit for y'all. Get this guy in here. This is just to get our buffer tube on. Best way to do it like this. Best way that I know how to do it, anyway. A lot of times, it's one thing I just did. A lot of times these kits, whatever kind of buffer it is, if it's a kit, it's going to come like this, right? It's going to have your end plate behind your castle nut, which is opposite of what it's supposed to be. But they do that for shipping, obviously. So you need to switch those around and make sure that your little teeth, right, the castle part, right, that is facing out, away from the firearm. Okay. You're going to back it out all the way. All right. And before we get too far and get ahead of ourselves, we need this detent. All right. These detents, this is for your buffer detent, and the rear takedown pin. All right. Close up this box so if and when it falls, it doesn't go flying across the floor. Make that down there. Maybe you can see that a little bit better. I don't know. Okay, so you're going to take your takedown pin. All right. It's got a channel on one side. Here we go. It's got a channel on one side and it's smooth all the way around. Okay. So that channel side is going to be facing towards the rear. Okay, so put that guy in. You're going to take your detent, all right, one of these little detent guys, put that right in this hole right in the back. Take your spring, you're going to push that detent all the way and kind of play around with your rear takedown pin. If it's in there right, it should not rotate, right? And you should be able to push it all the way forward and feel that detent engage and try to keep the takedown pin from coming out. Okay, so it is doing that right now. So it's doing what it's supposed to be, which means it's lined up and it's fine. Now is when we take our buffer tube and we're going to start threading it in. Okay, a couple things we want to watch for. Goodness. Oh, there we go. I was going the wrong way. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. Okay. One of the things you want to watch for is to make sure that your detent hole right here, that it does not get covered up yet. And what I mean by that, I'll show you in a second. But as you screw this guy in, there's one side, actually I can show you on here, there's one side of these receiver extensions or buffer tube that most of the time they're going to have this extra lip that pops out, okay? I mean, they should have this lip that pops out. Sometimes there'll be a hole in it, like this one has a little hole cut out, sometimes not. This buffer tube does not, but for demonstration, this one does. And so as you're screwing this in, right, you're going to watch, and once that buffer tube, that lip that pops out, once it crosses over that detent hole, you know you've gone as far as you need to go. So you need to back it off, right? And you take your spring and your buffer retention detent, whatever. You're going to push that down inside, and you're going to complete that rotation, okay? So what that does, hopefully you can see right there, that lip on the buffer extension, or the receiver extension, excuse me, that lip that pops out is going to hold that detent down in there, okay? But it's going to allow it to move. So it should move, right? It should not be stuck. It should be able to move. And then you should align straight up and down your buffer tube. It's probably all making no sense at all. I apologize. All right, and then down here, one other thing is the spring that holds in your detent, so your detent spring, you need to push in, just like we did with the pistol grip, you need to line it up straight. Down here is what I'm talking about, and then push it straight in with that end cap, or end plate. At which point, you move in your castle nut, make sure this guy is straight. Okay, you're going to kind of hand tighten it a little bit. Especially with these guys, some are better designed than others. This guy, we really want to make sure he's on there straight. Okay. Different people will say different things about torquing down your castle nut. Some will say you need to get hand tight. Some will say you need to get 36 pounds, 32 pounds, 30 pounds. Whatever it is, whatever you practice, whatever you do, just try to be consistent with it, I guess. My best advice for you. But you want to get it nice and tight because they will back out if you're not careful. So that guy looks like he's nice and tight on there. And now what we can do, and what I'm going to do, because I think it's the best thing to do at this point, we're going to stake this. And to stake it, we get a center punch. Find my center punch. Alright, so I can't find my center punch. It's somewhere, but I'm going to do it off camera, but it's going to get done. But as you can see, hopefully, you got your big lugs right here, whatever you want to call these things, where your armor's wrench hooks up to your castle nut. Then you also have these little ones right here, okay? And what you can do is take your center punch, and you put it right above that on your end plate, right about there, and you give it a nice good whack. And what that's going to do is it's going to expand that metal right on your end cap. It's going to push it into that little divot or that little cutout, and it's going to lock in your castle nut so it doesn't back off. Right? If you don't do that, the only reason you wouldn't want to do that, in my opinion, is if you're a kind of guy like me that that changes out buffers and things all the time. And if you do that, then more than likely you're going to change your buffer tube out before it works itself loose. I have had rifles that have come loose though, so probably not a bad idea to do it anyway. So if you're building one of these, that's a good thing to look for to make sure it's staked. That's what it's called, staking your castle nut. But there we go. Other than that, I think this thing is going to be done. And once I find my stupid pin, then I will I'll give it a punch. So that is the lower. Take our spring and our buffer tube and make sure they actually can fit in here. Oops. There we go. Line that up. There we go. Sometimes they go in better than others. And once you're on camera, nothing's going to work. There we go. So it's in there, and as you can see, that detent right there, that's what's holding the buffer inside, so it doesn't come out. Pop out these detents, hopefully. The rear one comes out, and they're going to be stiff. When you get a new gun, these detents are going to be stiff, because they're brand new, and they've not been worked, and they need to be worked. So put that guy on, like so. Okay. Make sure it charges. So it does charge. It's not hanging up on anything. Okay. Appears to be fine. It is nice and straight. So there we go. So that, the safety check, we've got safeties working. Put it on fire. Fireworks. Resets. Put it on safe. Nothing happens. Alright, it is a little bit of a gritty trigger, and we're going to go over that and see if we can smooth out that trigger, because that's just a mil-spec trigger. Just for kicks, we'll see what it's pulling at right now. Alright. Can you see that? Maybe. Kind of. Dang, that's a heavy trigger. It's 7.5 pounds. £8. without maxing out my scale. Seven and a quarter. Six and three quarter. So it's within spec, I guess. I think it has to be within what, 10 pounds or something. I don't know. Gonna need to be worked in a little bit. That reminds me of a story though. In boot camp, I was going to get my. We're fixing to do rifle qual, right? And before then, who cares about the function of the gun as long as it has absolutely no dirt and whatever else on it. But they don't really care if it functions because you wouldn't even know if it functions because they don't have ammo. So once we go to qual, right, do our qualification, and we start actually checking the firearms, they had us go through an armor station and they checked the triggers, make sure they were fine. One good reason they should do that is because I think, my understanding of it, these were brand spanking new rifles, so we got lucky with that. They still had iron sights, so that was cool. We didn't have to get spoiled with ACOGs, but they still had iron sights, and so we had M16A4s that we, they basically sounded like this. They were very, very tight, very, some of them were gritty, because they had not been shot. They were brand spanking new guns. So they went to go check the trigger pull on mine because mine was heavy. I mean, it was really heavy. It was stinking heavy. And the way they tested it is they'd hold the rifle up, and they had, I think it's a 10 pound, a 9 or 10 pound, or maybe it was 5, I don't remember. It was a weight, right? And it basically would, instead of being a gauge like this, it had the hook on top, which would hook onto the trigger, but then it had the weights. And so they would hang that on there, and then if the weights were heavy enough to pull the trigger, they knew it was within spec, because however many that was, 5, 7, 10 pounds, it was heavy enough to pull that trigger down. Well, they tried it on mine, and it didn't work. And I could have swore, and I still think they didn't want to mess with it because it was a new gun. They knew, yeah, it's fine, but it sucks for this guy because he's got a 10-pound trigger pull. That they gave it a little, a little shaky shake, which is going to give it that just a little extra oomph when it hits the bottom to break that trigger. So I don't know. That could just be a bunch of, my paranoia about it all. Ended up shooting fine, but that reminds me that every time I check a trigger with these things and I see that little hook, it just reminds me of that. So you got to be careful. You got to put it in the same spot every time. You got to put it the same spot of the trigger, the same spot of the hook, right? Because you're going to get completely different readings if you check the pull. If you check it up here, up by the top of the trigger, or if you check it way down here by the toe of the trigger or the bottom of the trigger. You're going to get drastically different readings. So you got to make sure you read it at the same spot every time and go off that. So anyway, that is the AR pistol. We're going to go ahead and put on the Spark. I already took it out of the box because I'm a little impatient. But I took it out and put in the battery to make sure that worked. But these look pretty cool. Like I said before, I've never personally used one. I've heard good things about them. I think people compare them. I don't remember if they compare them to the what is it? The SIG. I think SIG makes one that's like this. I don't remember. But anyway, here we go. So we need. I think this does come with a riser, doesn't it? Oh, and it did come with a battery. Ha! It just wasn't plugged in. But it does come with a riser. But we're not going to put in the riser. We're going to leave it as it is. So we just need these short screws, which are these little guys. Okay. And as of now, I'm not going to Loctite this until I actually get out there and shoot it and make sure everything works just fine. So I would be putting Loctite on these, but I'm not right now. Not until we can function check it and make sure it's fine. I should have an Allen key. There we go. Okay, there we go. And I like to run my optics pretty much the front of the receiver. No particular good reason why. That's just how I like to run it. So make sure this guy does turn on. Which button is it? There we go. Okay. Yeah, and it pops right up. So there we go. So cool. So that's pretty neat. That's pretty neat. So this is basically what you can get from Palmetto State, minus the lower receiver. You could get lower receivers from them, but basically this is what you're going to get with that 10.5-inch. That 10.5-inch deal they had. I don't know. Sometimes they might still have it going on. Depends on when I can actually get this video out. But for about $260, something like that, for the upper and the lower parts kit and the CAC blade, and then it was $200 for the Spark and 10 mags. So you could say you got the Spark for $200 and 10 mags for free, or you could say you got the Spark for $100 and 10 mags for $10 a piece. Which either way, that's a really good deal. The Spark, probably can see it. Maybe, yep, there you go. Whoop, there it is. Little, I think it's a 2 MOA dot. I believe that's what it says. Length, eye relief, lower 1/3 co-witness. Weight 7 and something pounds. I know it said it in here somewhere. Well, I thought it did. I think it's a 2 MOA dot. It looks pretty small. Depending on how low you take it down. Anyway, and I have astigmatism, so it is a little starburst, but I have astigmatism. But anyway, looks pretty cool. We're going to run this. We're going to see how she shoots, work out the kinks of it, see if anything needs to be changed, anything needs to be upgraded on it before I send it out. But other than that, I think we're good to go. So there we go. I hope you all enjoyed that. I really, really do. One thing else I noticed just about the rifle up front, it's got an F-marked front sight base, which is pretty cool. Whoops. Trying to do that. Anyway, I hope you liked that. I hope that was worth your time. And we will get out and do some shooting and see how we like it. So thank you all for your support. Really, really do appreciate it. It's awesome. I got a lot of cool stuff planned, but that's not going to happen unless we get some more support. It kind of sucks, but it doesn't suck because it'll be fun. I'll probably end up doing it anyway, and I'll just go in debt, and then my wife will kill me. So there we go. Let's just hope not. Let's hope not. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that was weird. Okay, all right. Y'all be good, be safe, and we'll catch you on the next video.